Speaking of world leaders, Chinese President Hu Jintao has cut short his G8 trip and headed home from Rome to deal with the ethnic violence in Xinjiang, which flared on Sunday. There was relative calm, as Steve and I were talking about on Monday, but then things came roaring back with a vengeance. Steve in Beijing with the very latest. Stevie.
Yeah, Bernie, this is really an unprecedented move by a Chinese president to end an overseas trip early, especially one considered so important at the G8, indicating really the severity of the situation. It is unclear, though, exactly what he will be addressing when he comes back here. Of course, will he go and be a man of the people, or will there be some sort of harsher tone coming from Beijing? So far, Beijing has remained relatively quiet. The official comments on the Xinjiang unrest is coming from Xinjiang authorities that we've gotten at a press conference, in particular yesterday. You're seeing the video we've gotten over the last couple of days, ethnic Han Chinese and Uyghur minorities fighting on the streets of Urumqi again yesterday, some using machetes, pipes, bricks, you name it, to attack each other and police. We've talked to our reporter on the scene this morning. He says it is quiet today so far. Police yesterday fired tear gas to prevent a mob of Han Chinese from avenging rioting by Uyghurs. This after several dozen Uyghur women took to the streets late morning yesterday to protest the arrest and killings of their husbands and children in the riots.
Our situation is too tragic. It would be better to shoot and kill us than to live like this. The people that protested the other day on the riots, men and women, we heard they were killed and died in very, very tragic ways.
It is definitely a tragic situation. Police arresting more than 1,400 people after the violence first broke out Sunday. The Uyghurs have long complained of discrimination and unfair division of the region's resources with the majority Han Chinese. Authorities, though, blaming overseas separatist Uyghur groups for the violence, singling out the exiled head of the World Uyghur Congress, Rabia Kadir, for instigating the riots, an allegation she denies. Some 20,000 security personnel have been deployed throughout Urumqi, and authorities have cut internet and also phone lines to try and stem the violence. Really, Bernie, very unprecedented for Hu Jintao to come back so early. Obviously, he realizes the severity of the situation. This is an important trip for Hu to Rome, of course. It's on all the newspapers today. Hu Jintao in Rome on just about every newspaper we have here. Obviously, the issues with the yuan and the global currency and China's role in helping fight the global recession, they're all taking backseat to the domestic issues in Xinjiang right now.
Yeah, especially with all that talk about establishing a new reserve currency, as Bob and I were talking about, very, very unprecedented. As a matter of fact, trust me, I know you're not a geopolitical analyst on issues of this nature, but you've seen the news unfold. You can't escape it. It's been on the TV, on radio, plastered across the TV headlines. Earlier during the break, you and I were actually talking about the fact that there's been fairly unfettered, I mean, relatively speaking, fairly unfettered reportage surrounding the Xinjiang situation. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, I think that it shows confidence by the Chinese leadership that they can share some of the issues that the country's facing with the rest of the world. And China really does everything under a microscope these days. China is looked at as an economic savior in many respects to the world. Their stimulus package is viewed as one that has been, I believe, relatively successful in maintaining growth. The continued stimulus by banks in terms of lending both from a corporate perspective as well as from a retail perspective has been positive as well. Yeah. So things in China are viewed very carefully by the world and viewed as a very important component of world growth and geopolitical developments as well. When you think about whether it be the internal issues in China, whether it be the central role that China plays in dealing with North Korea, as an example, the Chinese leadership plays a very central role in many geopolitical affairs today. Right. I think the fact that President Hu has cut short a trip to come home and focus on domestic issues is quite a positive message to the Chinese people.
Say hi to Steve in Beijing.
Steve, good morning.
Hi, Bob. Good morning. Good to see you again. Hey, what is your general take on the Chinese economy? Is this recovery tenuous? I mean, when, of course, the global financial crisis hit and the exports dropped off, we had migrant workers get laid off. That's led to some of this unrest. You know, would you say the economic recovery in China is tenuous, exacerbated again by any potential social unrest that we're seeing already?
Well, I think you're hearing again words about whether there's a decoupling that's taking place in the world, and whether China or Asia can decouple from the global and developed world economies. And I personally think that the jury is still out in terms of whether there can be decoupling. Clearly, you're seeing an increase in domestic consumption in China across a number of fronts, and China has created some programs to promote more domestic consumption. But the Chinese economy is dependent in large part on the world economy. Exports still constitute a big percentage of overall economic activity. And without more recovery around the world, it's hard to understand how significant decoupling will take place. Where you have seen clearly some decoupling has been in the equity markets around the world. Some of the best performing markets in the world have been in Asia, and generally speaking, the developed market economies their equity markets have lagged over the course of the last few months. Whether that trend continues, I think we have to see. There certainly has been a lot of capital that has flowed into the emerging markets, either from the sidelines or in some cases from the developed markets, and that should promote outperformance by some of the emerging markets.
Okay, Bob.